All right. There are some new legal setbacks facing former President Donald Trump. A federal appeals court ruled the Justice Department can resume using documents marked as classified that were seized from Mar-a-Lago in its criminal probe.
And the hits keep coming for him as New York's Attorney General files a lawsuit against the former president and 3 of his children. It alleges more than a decade of fraud in the Trump organization. The former president denies the allegations, of course, calling it a witch hunt. So I want to bring in CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Sganga to talk a little bit more about this case. Nicole, I'm glad that you are here. So this is a civil lawsuit, but how serious are the accusations in this suit, and what could the penalties be?
Anne-Marie, it's serious in that it undercuts the sort of shiny gleam of the Trump empire, his organization, his business, his reputation as a shrewd businessman. And New York Attorney General Letitia James is accusing Mr. Trump of fraud and alleging that he's lied about his assets for more than a decade. She's also suing his 3 eldest children, Don Jr., Eric, and Ivanka, and seeking to forbid all of them from ever doing business in the state of New York again. Now, James said Mr. Trump and his family lied to lenders and insurers by overstating their wealth, going so far as to call it the art of the steal. This lawsuit seeks to recover more than $250 million in what James' office says are gains Mr. Trump acquired through deceptive practices. The more than 200-page civil lawsuit, as you mentioned, also argues Mr. Trump violated criminal state law and potentially federal law, too, but James's office lacks the authority to file criminal charges in this case, so they've also referred it to the Southern District of New York and the IRS.
How has Trump responded to this suit? I know he did an interview with Sean Hannity where he said that he can declassify classified information by just thinking about it.
Oh, he said that?
Yeah.
Yes.
He didn't give that interview to the judge because when the judge asked about, proof that anything like that occurred, suddenly his attorneys,
he was asked what's the process, and he said, "I'm the president. The president of the United States can declassify information just by thinking about it." Yeah, is that right, Nicole? I know that that's not right, but is that right that he said that?
It's right that he said that. We're going to get to the Mar-a-Lago case in a second. Now, of course, there's Mr. Trump's response, and then there's his attorney's response, right? And so an attorney defending Mr. Trump called this suit, the suit from the Attorney General in New York, an unchecked abuse of authority, said it was neither focused on facts nor the law, adding that the New York Attorney General is solely focused on advancing her political agenda. Now, in that appearance you mentioned on Fox News, Mr. Trump said he thought there would have been a settlement here, but he also claimed that he was not guilty. So those two things not really adding up. But he called Wednesday's lawsuit a continuation of a witch hunt against him.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was referring to, which was the Mar-a-Lago search that happened. And this is the, so,
we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, he's involved in a lot of.
So we're like going on to another case now. So that was a civil lawsuit that we learned about yesterday. But back to the Mar-a-Lago search and the special master being appointed. And one of the things that the Justice Department had been asking is that they could continue to go through the documents even as they're being reviewed. So this is a win for the DOJ. The answer was yes, you can keep going through these documents. This had the potential to tie up this investigation for a very long time, which is a strategy that we've seen from Trump attorneys many, many times. Because conceivably, what could have happened is the special master could have said, all right, I've analyzed this one sheet of paper and I decide you can review it. And then they would say, we appeal. And then another one and another. It could go on forever. So can we talk about how much of a win this is for the DOJ?
Yeah, this is a massive win for the Department of Justice, who'll now regain access to, as you mentioned, key documents that were marked classified that were seized by the FBI in that August 8th search of the former president's Mar-a-Lago estate, just to bring our viewers up to speed. A lot to keep track of here. And what this does is it allows the United States government to really pick up where they left off in their criminal investigation into the former president's handling of this very sensitive information, and ultimately to determine whether or not to press charges. Now, the ruling by Judge Eileen Cannon could, as you mentioned, have delayed this investigation by weeks. Now the U.S. government gets to resume its work, at least for now. And in that finding from the 11th Circuit, this is important, that 3-panel judge in Atlanta took issue with Mr. Trump's rationale that any of the roughly 100 documents marked as classified would be considered his property. It also took issue with Judge Cannon's initial ruling, writing that the lower court here abused its discretion.
All right. So how will the decision by the 11th Circuit affect this special master's review? I mean, it is interesting that, and this is why we shouldn't horse race these things. Last week, people were saying it's a win for the Trump campaign that he's got the special master appointed. Today, people are saying, oh, look, it's a win for the DOJ. This is deathly serious stuff. And this notion of winners and losers and who's up and who's down is frankly sometimes frustrating, Nicole. I'm sure it is for you as well.
Yeah, Vlad, I don't think there are any winners or any winners here, period. And I mean, the 11th Circuit ruled here that having the special master, the independent arbiter, review these roughly 100 documents marked classified really jeopardizes national security interests. So, beyond that, the 11th Circuit not buying the Trump team's argument that the former president could have, and you alluded to this earlier, declassified the documents after the fact. They called that a red herring, which for those of us who love a good literary device in a legal document basically means this is all a distraction. And the 11th Circuit wrote that, quote, the record contains no evidence that any of these records were declassified. And they noted when Mr. Trump's team came before that special master, that independent arbiter, Judge Raymond Dearie, that they resisted providing any evidence that the former president had declassified any of these documents. But Vlad, to your point about the horse race, here's the bottom line I want our viewers to take away. Mr. Trump is implicated in a handful of civil and criminal probes playing out right now, various investigations. Yesterday certainly was a 1-2 punch for the former president. But, this litigation, these ongoing investigations, they are marathons, not sprints. So our viewers should hang tight, before we make any sort of determinations in the long haul.
Yeah, important note. Nicole, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.